All right, guys. Happy Tuesday. This is making this specifically for the Facebook group Lose Fat, Not Your Sanity. And I wanted to actually go over how to determine your calories, especially if you're looking to diet. Right? A lot of us and a lot of people out there, they want to lose weight and they want to be able to sustainably keep it off, but they don't know where to start. They just know, oh, I need to eat healthy foods. Um, Eat healthier. That's just to the extent that they know. I need to eat a salad. I need to go exercise more, right? And in reality, it's more than that, right? And they're kind of missing out on the big picture. They're focusing on these small things that definitely play a role, but not nearly as much as the diet aspect, which no one likes to look at because they go, ooh, that means I have to make changes to my lifestyle. And right now, I'd like to keep my lifestyle and lose weight. And it goes, that might not be an option. You may need to do one or the other. Um, and sometimes it doesn't require you to completely get rid of one. Maybe it just requires you to get rid of one for a short period of time, and we'll go into that. So, from there, first, let's hold this up. Let's make it a little larger. Okay, wonderful. There we go. So, for today, we are discussing how to determine calories slash macros for losing weight. The very first step we need to do is going to be calculating your BMR, which is your basal metabolic rate. That is how many calories you burn by simply surviving. You could be sitting on a couch. Your body's going to have to do a lot of processes just to keep you alive. Your heart's pumping, blood's flowing, maybe your digestive food, whatever. You have to calculate your BMR. Okay. Second, we're going to assign an activity factor. That is how many calories you burn per day based off of your lifestyle and what you do. Third, we're going to assign how big of a deficit we need. How much of a deficit, how big of a percent of a deficit do we need to go in for your calories in order to see progress, right? Sometimes there's too big, sometimes there's too small. Number four is what kind of ratio of macronutrients are we going to work with, right? There's protein, carbs, fats. There's a bunch of different ways to go about doing that and how big of a ratio of each one you want. And I'll go into just a small, portion of that. Number five is how long is the diet and do you need refeeds or diet breaks? That's important because some people have a long ways to go. You might have 100 pounds to lose or more. Some people just want to diet quick for the summer and they only have 10 pounds they need to lose. And they're not sure how long they need to be dieting for. And then last, the number six is this way of eating sustainable, which I find to be one of the most important topics. So number one, calculating BMR. So this is what I use. This is the Harris-Benedict equation. Now, technically, you can use other equations, and I've seen people do it based off of your height and things like that in centimeters. But for right now, this is what I use, and you can usually just go to an actual website that's just like type in Harris-Benedict equation on Google. You'll be able to find it. Your basal metabolic rate, you're going to need this equation for men, this equation for women. You need your weight in kilograms, and then you also need your height in centimeters and your age. So at the bottom, you can actually do number three, which is determining the activity factor, which is usually, I've seen it usually from like 1.2 to 1.7, but it looks like they also have an option here for all the way up to 1.9 for them. So I don't usually use 1.9. I don't find people that need to be able to use 1.9 that often, but it definitely works its way up there. And so what you'll see is 1.2 is like sedentary or little or no exercise. You basically go to work, you probably sit all day, you're at a desk job, you go home, sure, maybe you help out around the house a little bit, but for the most part, you are not moving around that much. Lightly active, they put it like 1.375, and I would agree with this one. A lot of times you're working out a couple times a week, you probably get like 5,000 steps in a day. This is your average person right now. I would say most people are right in that 1.3 to 1.375 range, especially if you have a desk job or you're sitting a lot, right? If you're not getting let's say above 5,000 steps a day, you're probably not going to be in this category, right? Moving on to moderately active. You're doing moderate exercise / sports 3 to 5 times a week. You can definitely say, like, let's say I went to the gym and I work out 4 times a week. Okay, I would be considered possibly in that moderate category unless I had a desk job. Because you sit here and say, oh, I work out 4 times a week. Cool. That's for like 4 hours out of like the 40-hour work week or whatever. Like, you have a lot of time in between. Like, what else do you do? Oh, well, I just sit at the desk and I'm coding all day, work for Amazon or whatever. Okay, well, you're not that active. You think you are, but you're not. In this case, it would be like, man, you need to be like on your feet a good chunk of the day. Maybe up and down a lot. You're walking from cubicle to cubicle. You're still getting your 5 to 10,000 steps, and you work out 3-4 days a week. Okay, cool. Moderately active. Down into the very active section, I would say you really, when it comes to very active, you're probably going to be someone who goes to the gym every day or maybe 5-6 times a week. You also get a ton of steps in every day. You're constantly moving. You feel like you have to move. Or even this would be considered like athletes, people who are continuously, like, they're working at their sport right now. They're practicing for multiple hours during the day. They also lift for an hour a day. And then they have classes where they're walking back and forth. That's how I see that a lot of times. But in order to figure out where your maintenance calories is, or what your maintenance calorie amount is, you first calculate your BMR, then you multiply that by your activity factor. Okay. So now let's say you have maintenance calories, right? If we're looking at that, let's just say hypothetically, let me do this. Okay, don't worry about that. So let's just say your maintenance calories are 2,400, something like that, right? So if you needed, PN and NCI, this is Precision Nutrition, certified through Precision Nutrition, as well as Nutritional Coaching Institute, NCI. They both suggest usually somewhere between a 10 to a 20% calorie deficit. So if my maintenance calories, let's say, were 2,400, 10% of that, 240 calories. So let's just stick with 10% right now because it's simple and easy, and I can right off the top of my head do that. Right, so 2,400 calories, that's what I've determined to say, if I eat this amount every day, I'm going to stay the exact same weight, right? Now, if you were to look at it, you can also figure out, okay, maybe I want to lose 0.5% to 1% of my overall body weight per week. That is a general suggestion that most books, as well as scientists and just overall fitness professionals would say that's a great place to start, because you're not going to lose too much too soon to the point where it's unsustainable. Okay, the basics here. So to lose 1 pound of body fat, or just weight in general, in a week, you need to be in a 3,500 calorie or energy deficit per week, right? So if I had 2,400 calories each day, you'd multiply that by 7 minus 3,500, and you figure that out. In fact, let's just do that real quick so that we can make it very simple. So if I had 2,400 calories per day, I times that by 7, that is 16,800. I'm going to minus 3,500. That's 13,300 divided by 7. That is 1,900. So that's roughly 500 calories per day, and that usually comes out to about what we want. So that would get me about 1 pound of weight loss per week. If I did everything else the same, I did my same workouts, my same amount of moving for the most part, and I reduced my calories by 500, I would lose 1 pound per week. Okay? So then if you go down, you go, I need to consider whether the fact if it's a short diet, 6 to 8 weeks, you can err on the more aggressive side. So maybe I want to lose 1.5 pounds per week or 2 pounds per week. In that case, maybe I'm not eating 1,900, maybe I'm eating 1,600 or 1,500. And I'm lowering my calories a lot because it's a short time period. I'm only dieting for 6 weeks. I'm getting ready for my vacation, whatever it may be. I'm going to be more aggressive. And then that way, it's a short period of time. I don't want to diet while I'm on vacation. I want to be able to have fun. That's fine. But let's say you have a lot of weight to lose and there's no vacation coming up right away. The diet can be 12 to 16 weeks, maybe even more. And you want to be more conservative due to the diet's nature of increasing cravings, and which can lead to eating and binge eating and zero weight loss. So the 12 to 16 week one tends to be something that is more sustainable. Like you just get more calories, right? I wouldn't need to lower down from 1900. It would stay at 1900 until I hit a plateau where I wasn't losing weight anymore, and then I can lower down. But imagine if I was at 1600 or 1500 from the very beginning, man, I might be kind of motivated because it's the beginning of a diet. I'm excited. I really want, progress. But maybe after a month, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, 7 weeks, 8 weeks, eventually I am going to hit a spot where I am just pissed off, cranky, and your chances of that binge eating go way up. And when you binge eat, we've all been there. Anybody here is very well aware. If you binge eat, you're not going to have 3 cookies, right? You're going all in. We're talking about multiple pieces of pie. We're talking the whole sleeve of cookies, dip it in peanut butter, right? We're not sitting here none of us are perfect by any means when it comes to this. We've all done it. And if you haven't, you're lying to yourself. Haha. We see you in the next group. You can go find another one. We know that happens, right? So the smart move is to take it a little bit slower if you can, and if you have time, to take it a little slower. Yes, it is frustrating as hell to go slower, but in the long run, your diet will look much more like your regular lifestyle, and then that means you'll actually keep your weight off, or have a better chance of keeping your weight off, instead of changing your whole life to contort yourself into this is the right diet for me. That has been shown to not work for a lot of people. You just end up gaining your weight back. Okay, next, macronutrient ratios. So if you do strength training, you obviously, or hopefully by now, that protein is a mainstay in your diet. It's really going to help you maintain muscle mass and lean body mass. And that's what usually gives you that good aesthetic look that's like, oh, okay. Someone wants to be toned, or they want to be ripped and get ready for summer, or at least they want to just be slimmed down, but they don't want to look, for lack of a better term, skinny fat. You can become the same person. Somehow you're just smaller, but you look the same. To my eyes, it makes no sense, but in reality, you have no muscle there. And so therefore, there's still fat there. You're just a smaller version of yourself. So protein is going to help us with keeping lean muscle mass, building lean muscle mass if you are someone who is a beginner. And so when we look at this, we say usually the range is, sometimes it's 0.7, but for now it's 0.8 to 1.2 grams per pound of body weight, unless you are obese or you are really, really high in weight. So let's say you were 300 pounds. Eating 300 grams of protein per day would be extremely difficult, probably because your protein content is really low in the first place. Right, but now, let's just say you aim for your goal weight, right? You're 300 pounds and you want to be 200 pounds. Okay, I'm going to eat 200 grams of protein per day. That's a great place to start. And as you start eating that way, you can slowly increase your amount to hopefully get closer to that 0.8 range. But for most people, this is a very healthy range. Protein super satiating. It keeps you fuller for longer. And for most people, this is the macronutrient that I think they struggle with the most. And if they were able to eat adequate amounts of protein, the rest of their diet would definitely be a whole lot easier to be adherent or consistent with. Okay, so the first thing you need to plan when it comes to your macronutrients, where you get your calories from, is your protein, right? If you can get 1 gram per pound or even up to 1.2 and you're lighter on the weight, absolutely do it. It will help you a ton when it comes to fat loss and weight loss. The second determining factor is going to be your fat sources, or your fat, like the amount of fat you're having, right? So if we had, let's say, 1,900 calories, right? We did our ratio and we figured out, okay, lose a pound a week, I need to be eating 1,900 calories or whatever it is, right? Now, fat and carbs are where you can kind of interchange, right? It does not matter if you want to eat more fat than carbs or more carbs than fat. Doesn't matter who you talk to, right? The ketogenic diet, paleo, all these different things, they're just different ways of saying, ooh, okay, you need to eat this amount of fat versus carbs versus because of your blood levels. Most of those things are above your pay grade. You don't need to worry about them. If you're diabetic, talk to your doctor. Don't get me wrong, right? Obviously, there's some certain things where medical stuff happens. But if you're just someone who struggles to lose weight, you're generally healthy. Like, you're not sitting here about to, croak in the next, 2 seconds. These are where personal preference definitely comes in. Now, fat is important for hormone levels. Don't get me wrong. But in a diet phase, this is something that is short term. 12 to 16 weeks, that's literally 3 or 4 months. Like, no one's going to sit here and screw up their hormone levels if they are in a diet for 3 or 4 months and then get out of it and go back to maintenance, right? So for me, I personally love carbohydrates much more than I do fat. I would much rather have more rice, more fresh fruit and vegetables, things like that, as opposed to, an extra thing of olive oil or peanut butter or avocado or nuts and seeds. It just doesn't really get me out of bed in the morning. So I choose 20%. So what I do is I take that 1,900 times, whoops, sorry. 20%, 1,900 is 380. Now, what we need to do is also figure out 380 calories. We need to divide by 9 because each fat calorie or gram of fat is 9 calories. So that's 42.22222. All that, we'll just say 42 grams. So I'd have 42 grams of fat, right? The remaining calories. So let's say I determine my protein. If I was, if I'm eating 1,900 calories, let's just say I weigh 180 pounds. Okay, so I'm having 180 grams of carbohydrates. Okay, which is 720 calories. 720. For fat, I was having, let me see, 0.20, 380. Okay. So we've got 1,100 calories there. So we've got 1,900. Okay, here we go. Wonderful. So I've got 800 calories left in order to be able to, all of that for carbohydrates, which is like, wonderful. We divide that by 4. You get 200 grams of carbohydrates. So that's how you would kind of figure that out. But again, the most important thing, and sorry to rant on this one, but the most important thing with your macronutrients and what I've seen work for people is determining or having an adequate amount of protein, right? So that you can fuel your training. Hopefully you're doing some strength training or some athletic training or something that fits in your lifestyle. After you've gotten your protein into an adequate range, fat and carbs can be whatever you want it to be as long as it fits inside of your calories. That's the simplified version. I hit my protein, I hit my calories. Fat and carbs, they are just, adding those two together, just make up the rest of your calories. So whatever your personal preference is, that's what's most important, because that's what's sustainable for you and how you will eat once you're done with your diet as well. Okay. Okay, so length of diet as well as diet breaks and refeeds. I'm going to try and go fast through these because I know we're taking a while. So length of diet, it really just depends on your goal and the time frame that you have. I would also add that the previous diet success plays a major role. So if you've done multiple diets before and you've been successful, awesome. You can be more aggressive and do a shorter frame diet. If you haven't been successful in very many diets that you've done, I would suggest, more like a 12 to 16 week diet and have it be conservative with the calorie deficit so that you don't feel like you're super hungry throughout the day. Because if you do, man, you're going to want to go reach for those snacks. You're going to get irritated and cranky, and you haven't been in that situation where you've been successful, and therefore you just eat whatever you want, right? So a diet usually lasts 6 to 14 weeks, sometimes longer or shorter, depending on if sometimes you have people who are doing bodybuilding shows, or they're getting ready for a photo shoot, or maybe they're just doing 6 weeks because they have a vacation coming up, right? So there's a bunch of different styles slash like lengths of diet, but for the most part, when you're doing a diet, if you're doing a longer diet, you want to include what's known as a diet break, right? And they can be spaced out, and you usually want to return to maintenance calories when you're on a diet break. Now, why would you need a diet break? You're like, no, I'm just going to go through. That's just taking extra time for me to be done with my diet. Now, I would agree that that is definitely the case. But if we think from a human aspect, not a scientific aspect, you have to go, well, life happens. My job is crazy stressful. The kids need to be, they're on spring break. My husband is all over the place. My wife is telling me this and that. And sometimes life just gets stressful as hell. And you need to have a time where not only does that stress need to be reduced, hopefully, but your diet stress and being in a deficit also plays a role in your overall stress. So what we do is usually it'd be like, okay, I'm going to diet for a month, maybe 6 weeks, followed by a 2-week diet break where I return to maintenance. Those 2 weeks have been shown to actually help you maintain muscle mass so that when you're training, you can push yourself real hard. You can rebuild your glycogen stores. You can feel better, like nervous system wise, you just feel better having more food. And then when you go back into your diet, you'll be more consistent and the adherence level will be through the roof, which is what we want. Sometimes diet breaks, refeed days, anecdotally, they're just keeping people adherent. And then the last thing is sustainable eating, right? I see this all the time. People forget this when they're dieting is what is the diet after the diet? I'm going to repeat that. What is the diet after the diet? Okay, because some people, and a lot of people actually, are going to diet successfully at some point in time in their lives. And they'll lose 20 pounds, 30 pounds, 40 pounds, right? They're going to go have fun with their newfound body, their newfound weight. And the only thing that's going to happen is they're going to gain all of that weight back again. Now, it might not happen within a few months. Maybe it happens within a year, 2 years, 3 years. But they go from losing 30 pounds to right back to where they started within 1, 2, 3 years. Right? And your thing is like, how do I stop that from happening? If I lose weight, I want to keep it off. And I am the exact same way, right? So what you need to do is you need to find a diet that's enjoyable to you, that you can eat that way for the rest of your life. So when you increase your calories to maintenance, you stay the same weight. But guess what? It doesn't feel like it's all that different other than the fact that you're not hungry, right? I use ketogenic diet as an example here, but that's just because it's the one that's very, very popular right now. So let's say you do a ketogenic diet where your carbohydrates are practically none or under 50 grams per day. You have a majority of your calories coming from fat and protein, and that's just the way that you were able to lose weight, which is wonderful. It is a great way of doing that. I'm not gonna, harp on the ketogenic diet. But let's say you are someone who craves carbohydrates. You can't get enough of them. But the ketogenic diet, you're like, oh, because I love carbs, I'm going to get rid of it completely and I'm going to lose weight. And you do that and it's successful. You definitely lose weight. But you know that when you go off your diet, what do you want to have? Breads, pastas, cookies, just anything carbohydrate related. You want to have that. And what do? You binge eat, and you have a ton of carbohydrates because you did so well on your diet. You lost 40 pounds. Yay. Right. And you think, oh, it's no big deal. I'm just going to have it for a little bit. But it slowly sneaks into your everyday eating or every week eating. And again, after a year, 2 years, 3 years, you've gained all the weight back and sometimes even more. Right. So for me, when I work with clients, my biggest thing is when you lose weight, it needs to be sustainable. It doesn't mean that it needs to be exactly the same way that you've been eating, because sometimes diet choices like eating processed foods and chips and cookies and drinking beer and drinking juice and having bacon every day, like sometimes that kind of stuff, it doesn't need to be gotten rid of completely, but it needs to be reduced, right? Like that's where moderation comes in. I'm a very big proponent of like, hey, you want to be able to eat something, you should be able to eat it. Because if you have the option to eat it, your cravings aren't going to be nearly as bad. Or you can just have it, right? But the thing is like, you can finally understand, hey, okay, as soon as something no longer becomes off limits to me, it doesn't have power over me, right? It's like when we were, teenagers and kids, and your parents are like, well, no, I don't want you hanging out with so-and-so. Who the hell did you want to hang out with? That person. When they told you they didn't want you doing something, what did you want to do? Exactly what they told you not to do. That is like the human side of sustainable eating. So I know this was real long, and I'm sorry about that, but I wanted to explain this so that you guys can get a better understanding. Um, when it comes to weight loss and everything, do you need a coach? No. You can absolutely do this by yourself. Does a coach, what does a coach do? A coach keeps you accountable. A coach does a lot of the extra work and calculations and whatnot for you. They're the one checking in and saying, okay, what's your life like? They're tracking things. They're doing all the back end work to relieve some stress from you from having to do all this on your own. But if you're someone who has a lot of time, they really enjoy this kind of stuff. Take this information, try it out yourself, see how it goes. And yeah, that's my biggest thing is I want to be able to help everybody hopefully lose weight if they're looking to lose weight. And if they have any questions, please feel free to ask them in the comment section. I'd be happy to help out anybody who has questions. And I'm by no means some sort of like doctor or complete expert. I'm certified as a nutrition coach. I want to help people. So if there's people who know more than me, feel free to drop in any sort of tips they have. But this is what I have found to be successful with myself and with clients. And it's a great place to start. And there's lots more to learn, but hey, great place to start. All right. Thank you.